Thank you, Brad. Now deliver the last speech of the day is Bruce. 5 minutes.
You have, in deciding whether eating animals is ethical, you have an awful lot to consider. It's an interesting construct when they go 7 minutes and then they go 5 minutes, and he says, Bruce hasn't responded to this, Bruce hasn't responded to this, and my only time in between those two speeches was the cross-examination when they didn't ask that question. But it does, they set up, it seems to me that the principal issue here is they set up these sort of tough cases and say that unless I answer the tough cases, I don't have an ethical framework for what strikes me as a very easy case. So the good of eating animals, and both of the negative did make eating animals sound very good, but what it boils down to is it boils down to a short-term palate preference. We eat meat because we enjoy eating meat. So then you weigh that, that's the good. And you weigh that against issues of environmentalism, issues of global poverty, and issues of cruelty to animals. Who in here thinks that our choices vis-a-vis the environment are ethical choices? Most people. Who here thinks that cruelty to animals is unethical? Who thinks that we have an ethical obligation to care about the global poor? Most of us. So the ethical construct is, do you care about these issues? And then what you end up with is the few arguments that they made that in fact I'm wrong on these issues. So on the issue of global poverty, they make a couple of, basically their argument is that that dumping the food on the global poor will be a problem, which I would agree with, and that if we don't have the price for this food, the food simply will not be grown. It won't be fed to the global poor. It just won't be grown because they can't afford it. Both of those things, according to all of the global poverty economists, are just categorically untrue. The reason there's even a debate about biofuels in a world where there are 1 billion starving people is because biofuels do in fact create competition for grain, and they do cause people to starve. So the reason that Greenpeace unveiled that massive banner in the Amazon rainforest is that the Amazon rainforest is being chopped down to grow soy to feed to chickens. Throughout the entire famine in Somalia in the 90s, the entire famine in Ethiopia in the 80s, those countries were growing feed to ship that feed to Europe to feed that, to give that food to chickens and pigs and farm animals. Among the people who study this is not contested. The reality is that if we are choosing to consume something that requires 20 times the resources of something else, with all of the concomitant environmental problem that entails, one of the very human realities of that is that we are driving up the price for the global poor, and we are causing human beings to starve. We're directly contributing to that problem. On the environmental issue, they basically tried to obfuscate the issue by bringing up things like malls, chopping down forests to get medicine. In other words, they're saying there are these two really important competing goods. What do you do environmentally? But that's not the issue here. If you agree that the environment is an important good, if you agree that we should try to cut down on our contribution to global warming, if you agree that we shouldn't waste, and you agree that those are ethical issues, then consuming something that requires 20 times the resources of something else, it better be a really big good on this side. And I would contend that the 15 minutes or an hour or however much pleasure you get from eating an animal is not, the same as finding a cure to cancer or whatever the medicine is in this hypothetical example. And then finally, on the issue of animals, well, everything you're getting in Yale's dining hall, everything that you get when you go out to eat, and 99% of the animals who are raised in this country are treated in exactly the way that the Meet Your Meat video documents. Chickens now live about 6 to 7 weeks on average. It's 6 to 7 weeks of abject misery. It's 10 billion animals a year. And if you would not personally, going back to Shelley, if you would not personally slice these animals' throats open, if you wouldn't personally cause these animals to suffer so miserably, don't pay other people to cause these animals to suffer so miserably for something as unimportant and short-term and temporal as a palate preference. If you agree environmental preservation is an ethical good, if you agree that decreasing global poverty is an ethical good, and if you agree that opposing cruelty to animals is an ethical good, I hope that you will also agree that a short-term palate preference is not enough of a positive that it outweighs the rest, and agree with me that eating meat is unethical. Thank you.